After this past season, there are questions about the longevity of Justise Winslow's career. He's been banged up and super injury prone, and that continued this season. But before we get into it, this player preview is brought to you by BetOnline. Use the promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, for a 50% reward bonus. Before the season, I did a player preview on Justise Winslow. Here was some of the talking points. And Justise Winslow has a legitimate chance to have a role next season despite his lack of efficiency, simply because he just plays the game the right way and plays hard. But is that enough to be a legitimate role player for a playoff team? We're gonna find out this year, but by the sounds of it, from Chauncey Billups and Joe Cronin, Justise Winslow is going to play. He's going to play a decent amount of minutes, and we're going to find out how much a player that plays Chauncey ball can impact winning. But his three-point shot has absolutely trailed off. This is the one thing that I wish he could just do. He's a tough guy to fit into lineups because he doesn't really space the floor. Defenders don't really respect him. He also hasn't been a good finisher, only shooting 45% inside the arc. So even if he is cutting, he hasn't been the best player in terms of converting looks in the paint. This is where I think Justise Winslow being a player that can be a role player for a winning team is questionable, simply because he just doesn't make a high percentage of his shots. His true shooting percentage last year for Portland was 46.5%. The league average is around 56%, so that's about 10 percentage points lower in terms of his true shooting percentage. This is the area of his offensive game that is a negative. There's a lot of other positives that we'll talk about in the rest of this video, but I can't understate the fact that Justise Winslow truly is just not an efficient player, doesn't make a high percentage of his shots, and it's hard to fit that in with a role player into lineups that best optimize guys like Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons. I actually like Justise Winslow as kind of a secondary on-ball defender that you like having off the ball, playing some team defense. He's smart enough to make the right rotations, help at the right time, that sort of thing. So I think that is the best role for him. He can definitely guard on the ball, but I've never viewed him as a guy that you can rely on to be your main on-ball point of attack lockdown defensive piece. I want to give a storyline for every Blazer this season. Justise Winslow's storyline is fit. How does he fit? Who does he fit next to? And what sort of system does he fit in? I think there's some question marks about that. We all know what he is as a player. He's been in the league multiple years, but the fit is questionable. So those were the thoughts going into this past season. Now let's take a look at how this past season went. Let's first start with Winslow's stats. I have per game stats and per 36 stats right here. I set some per 36 goals before the season. For those of you wondering why they're per 36 goals and not per game goals, I didn't know how many minutes per game Justise Winslow was going to play, and obviously that would affect his per game stats. So per 36 minute stats takes away that minutes discrepancy. So the first goal I had for Winslow was 12 points per 36. He was about 3 short of that. I gave him a goal of 9 rebounds per 36. He was 2.3 rebounds short. He did pass his assist goal. I had a goal of 4 assists per 36. He averaged 4.5. He was a good secondary playmaker this year. And then I gave him the goal of 2.5 blocks plus steals per 36. He averaged 1.4 steals and half a block. So a little bit short of that one as well. And then I didn't set a game goal for him, but if I had, it would have probably been around 40 or 50 games, which honestly is not a high bar to set, but unfortunately he wouldn't have even cleared that. Only 29 games this season for Justise Winslow. We'll talk about his injuries in a second. Here are his shooting splits. I gave Justise Winslow a goal of 48% on 2-pointers. He didn't come close to that. He was more than 4 percentage points short. I did give him a goal of 33% on 3-pointers. He did come closer to that one. He was actually above 33% there shortly before his season ended, but with him only playing 29 games, he only shot 45 threes, which is an extremely small sample size. The difference of a couple of misses or a couple of makes will swing that percentage drastically. So this is one of those situations where if he had shot 40% on 45 threes, you couldn't have read into it at all. I think, 17 for 45 is probably 40%. Let me know if my math's good down in the comment section below. But regardless, he still failed this goal. He did pass my free throw shooting goal for him. I wanted him to shoot above 70% from the free throw line. He shot 71. But in general, Winslow's efficiency is very subpar. A 46.6 true shooting percentage is an abomination. It's really, really bad, especially for such a low usage player. I wanted Justise Winslow to be more efficient going into the season. he wasn't. And we'll expand on that when we get to the negatives. But first, let's start with the positives. Winslow's passing was definitely a plus this year. I was really impressed with a lot of transition playmaking. He had a lot of secondary stuff, cut into the middle of the paint, catching the ball, hitting the dump off guy, or throwing a lob pass. He was a really good connective passer. We all knew he wasn't going to be making plays off the dribble for himself and just bringing in 3 defenders into the paint and making kick-out passes that way. In the NBA, there are different type of playmakers, and Justise Winslow's playmaking was more of secondary variety. When he was healthy to start the season, I thought his passing was really, really nice to have on this team, and we saw it last year during that 4-game winning streak the Blazers went on, the infamous 4-game winning streak. His ability to make the right play, as well as push the pace in transition and find shooters, was really nice to have on this Blazers team to start the season when a lot of guys were shooting the lights out. Jeremy Grant started the season hot from 3. Shaedon Sharpe started the season hot from 3. I think playing next to Justise Winslow helped Shaedon Sharpe get off to a better start than people were expecting of him. Now Shaedon Sharpe's a completely different player. I'm looking forward to his player review. But the biggest positive of this season was definitely Winslow's passing. The second positive is his situational defense. And I say situational because I think in certain situations he was a really good defender. In other situations he was a bit more questionable. A lot of defensive analytics, like Justise Winslow and his impact on the defensive side of the floor. I think defensive analytics are noisy. I don't look at them all that much. It's a lot easier to quantify offense than it is defense. But as far as Justise Winslow's defense goes, he defended bigger players well. He was a little better on the perimeter to start the season. Once he got banged up a little bit, I think he regressed in that area. And unfortunately, that's the one area the Blazers drastically need on the defensive side of the ball. They need somebody that can defend the perimeter, be a lockdown guard defender, and Justise Winslow just is not that guy, and I think struggled in those situations. And I think as his season wore on, he had less and less energy on the defensive side of the ball. He started the season with a massive defensive effort against Domantas Sabonis and the Sacramento Kings, which was a really fun win to start the season with. And this segues into the third positive, was his play at center. As a small ball center, being able to pass, being able to handle a little bit, those skills are a little bit more unique at that spot compared to a forward spot. So they were more of strengths for him. And then his physicality that he also has, which is his fourth positive, allows him to play bigger than his listed height. I was impressed with the way he battled a lot of centers this season, and that was probably the best defensive role for him. Now, on a Blazers team that gives up a ton of dribble drives, I don't think it would have worked long term because Winslow is not much of a rim protector. Winslow playing the center spot, I think, works best against centers that have the ball in their hands a lot, and on a team that is able to keep guys on the perimeter more in check, where Justise Winslow wouldn't be tasked with protecting the rim a ton. So Winslow is definitely a situational defensive player at this point, but there were some situations where I was impressed with him on that side of the ball. Now let's take a look at the negatives. The first negative is his injuries that continue to plague his career. I don't know what the future holds from Justise Winslow, but I am not confident in him being able to have a healthy career at any point. It sounds like there's a lot of problems with his ankle. He just had a surgery to clean that up, and he's just always been banged up throughout his NBA career. He's never been all that healthy, and we continued to see that, and injuries have a toll on your body. And it seems like he's lost a little bit of burst, lost a little bit of athleticism. It's due to no fault of his own. It's just due to him being, unfortunately, an injury-prone player. I wish nothing but the best for him in this regard. But at this point, given some of the other limitations that we'll get into that we saw this past season, I don't think you can count on Justise Winslow. You can't count on him to stay healthy. He has other weaknesses. Those other weaknesses include his finishing, which was just really, really bad this year. According to Basketball Reference, Winslow only shot 55% from 0 to 3 feet, which is really, really bad. Really, really bad, especially for a forward player that plays some center. His lack of finishing ability around the rim made it so that even when he cut, which was a big topic going into this season, was Justise Winslow needs to be a cutter and get buckets around the hoop due to his lack of a shot. Even when he made the right cut, it wasn't productive enough because he didn't finish well enough. And this extends out to mid-range from 3 to 10 feet. he shot 38.6%. From 10 to 16 feet, he shot 28.6%. Now, some guys will have bad efficiency numbers from these ranges, but don't shoot a bunch of shots from there, so it's all right. But Justise Winslow shot 29% of his shots from 3 to 10 feet at that 38.6% clip, and over 10% of his shots from 10 to 16 feet. Approximately 40% of Justise Winslow's shot diet came from 2 in a range where he shot probably 35% combined. That's not good, and that hamstrings the team. And then from 3, his three-point shot still was not good enough. I don't have it as a negative because we expected this going into the season. These positive and negatives are more so based on my expectations going into this year. I didn't expect Justise Winslow to be this bad finishing around the rim and then to be as bad from the mid-range. From 3, he actually did a little bit better than I was expecting, so that's not a negative. But still, his lack of ability to consistently knock down threes and make opponents pay for leaving him defensively really makes the offense clunky, and his fit on the offensive end outside of situations where he's making a play for someone else, usually in transition, is just not good. The fit is not good, it's clunky, and it's a problem. If he was a better perimeter defender, then maybe he could still be a positive and a impactful player for the Blazers on the court, but his perimeter defense really faded as last season went on. He's never been a great perimeter defender. That's not really his ideal role on the defensive end. But as the season went on, there seemed to be a drop-off in lateral quickness for him, a drop-off in foot speed, and an inability to keep guards in front of him especially, but even some forwards. He was getting blown by off the dribble a lot, and for a guy with his inefficiency problems, you just can't have that on the court. What's next for Justise Winslow? Hopefully he can find some sort of health. Normally in these segments, I like to talk about what I think a player should be doing to improve their game going into the offseason, but for Justise Winslow, it's not really about that. It's about being able to consistently play the game, to consistently stay on the court. And there's probably nothing outside of rehab and maybe strengthening certain areas that Justise Winslow himself can do in order to stay on the court more. Unfortunately, some guys just are cursed with injury problems, and that just seems to be the case for Justise Winslow, but he just, I guess, needs to rest up and stay healthy or get healthy and then see if he can play next year. As far as his contract status, he will be a free agent. There is a chance that the Blazers could re-sign him. We've heard about how much this Blazers organization likes Justise Winslow, both in the locker room and then as a role player on the court. I haven't shared those same sentiments, but I'm not the one who makes decisions, so we'll see if Joe Cronin likes Justise Winslow enough that after these injury issues, he still elects to bring him back in a Blazer uniform. And some of that could also be Chauncey Billups really valuing what Justise Winslow brings to the court. The Blazers started last season so hot that it wouldn't surprise me if this organization looked at Justise Winslow as a key part of that, and then Justise Winslow's absence as being a part of the losing that then followed. As far as my opinion goes, given his flaws and his injury history, I wouldn't re-sign Justise Winslow in free agency this year. I just think there's other more high upside guys that you can rely on being healthy more that will be available in the free agent market. It could be an undrafted free agent. It could be a high caliber G League guy. I mean, we saw what Skylar Mays came in and did in a Blazer uniform on a 10-day contract. There's other guys out there like that I think Portland should try and identify and bring in compared to running it back with Justise Winslow, who I'm not even sure is going to be able to be healthy to start next season. As far as the grade for Justise Winslow, I'm going to give him a C. This is what I expected out of Justise Winslow going into the season. A C is basically an average grade to me, a little bit below average. So his short season due to getting injured, his inability to become a more efficient player and especially finish around the rim means that I can't give him a higher grade than C. Anyway, let me know what you think of Justise Winslow down in the comment section below. And once again, thank you to BetOnline for sponsoring this player review. Promo code BELIEVE, BOEAV, for 50% rewards. And we're out of here. I'll catch you tomorrow in another player review. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.